This is ContactTalkRadio.com. Consciousness in action. And you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Ying.fm, and Upsnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio.
Welcome to HR and Career with AldeenST. Aldeen is a passionate human resource professional and career coach on a mission to explore and find best practices in HR and career development. Join AldeenST and her guests to explore the complexities of human resources and career development. This is HR and Career with AldeenST.
Welcome to HR and Career with AldeenST. I am your host, AldeenST, and today we are joined by Christy McCann Flynn, and she is the owner, CEO, founder of Go Coach. Now, Christy's background has been in leading HR and talent teams up to the VP level with a great depth and wealth of experiences in talent acquisition and development. Most recently, she's the founder and CEO of Go Coach, and she's taking her expertise to transformation through coaching. Welcome to the show, Christy.
Thank you. Thrilled to be here.
Awesome. Now, today we will be talking about talent acquisition, value, budgets, and playing offense. So I want to start off really quickly so our listeners know, what is the difference between recruitment and talent acquisition?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Essentially, the biggest difference between recruitment and talent acquisition is that recruitment is a means to a way of doing something, which is attaining great talent. Talent acquisition is a strategy.
Right.
And a lot of times that gets overlooked and is missed, and they get combined and thinking that they're the same, and they're not.
That's right.
So
I definitely agree with you there, Christy. For sure, recruitment in my eyes, I see, it's really a focus between whether it's short term and long term. So are you, like you said, recruitment is really filling it. It's filling that gap, whereas talent acquisition is a lot more strategic.
Yeah, and that strategy defines everything, because the talent acquisition needs to be connected with the overall core value prop of the company and, all the people that they're bringing in. And a lot of times when that strategy isn't in place, you're just hiring people to hire people, and
That's
really
right.
not building a strategy around, for them to be able to evolve and learn and develop. And so it's something that I think that some companies do really well and then other companies struggle. But if you look at it from a top-down initiative, it becomes very clear of all the different thoughts and philosophies that need to go into this in order to make sure that you execute correctly.
That's right. And I think that segues really nicely into talking about the role of talent acquisition. So you've already, hit on the point that it really is the strategic piece of what you do. So what other roles do you think talent acquisition plays in the grand scheme of things?
Well, I think that talent acquisition is a huge conduit, not only to tie the organization and the culture and the values that they currently have, but they're a real conduit to, just the overarching strategy within HR and people development. It starts with them. If you look at, any type of grow model that's out there, it's about how you attract talent, how you hire talent, and then essentially how you grow and further develop them. And when you just go straight to hiring mode, you're never going to get, the attraction point that you need as far as the talent, and then you're never going to be able to develop and retain them. And so I think that having a good talent acquisition strategy and the way that it's positioned in the company, needs not only to be a senior role, but a lot of times I think that this role shouldn't even be residing within HR. I really look at it as a separate function within the organization that has all the influence, just like, customer and account management does in sales.
And I mean, just listening to that there, I can see two themes coming out, where talent acquisition really contributes as a true competitive advantage to the company, as opposed to, like you said, hiring. I mean, I think of hiring as more of a transactional process, whereas your talent acquisition is a lot more strategic value add. And it definitely promotes a more proactive culture with talent acquisition, as opposed to, a lot of the reactivity that comes through a hiring process.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it starts with a strategy so that you can build on process and an overall execution that's a value add not only for the company, but, to everybody that you're interviewing along the way. It's an experience, just like any type of, consumer product that's out there. You're looking for an overall experience as to why you want to be able to be a repeat customer or buy again or work with the company. And at this in the same view, and not only, are the people, the ultimate product, they're the ones who make organizations. So
that's right.
From the beginning is so critical to success.
That's so true. And I think a lot of companies, they miss that. I mean, your best assets are your people. Yeah. And if you don't take care in attracting them, retaining them, and developing them, then like you said, you won't be able to service your customers the right way or be able to add the value the way you're thinking. So for sure. So I wanted to just segue now into how does talent acquisition truly add value to the company's bottom line? Like, I know a lot of HR professionals, I know when you said talent acquisition probably shouldn't even reside with HR, a lot of professionals might be listening and thinking, why not? But I think, like you said, talent acquisition is its own piece of machinery as part of the puzzle, right? So how do you think you can really add value to the bottom line through talent acquisition?
Well, I think, and a couple of different things that you just said, and I'll get to the bottom line in a second, is, when you look at organizations that they have all these different departments and there's only one department for people, right?
Right.
And everything is in that department. Hiring, development,
compensation.
Yeah, employee relations, legal, compliance, like, that's crazy that the fact that you have one department that manages every single person within your organization as far as their over employee value proposition. But two, this is where things constantly get lost and deprioritized when you have that many different roles, within a certain function. And that this is where it gets very hard to go to your initial question. How can talent acquisition add to the bottom line? And I think that they can add to the bottom line, and it's not going to be something that's going to be initial. It's going to be something that's long term. And
right.
When you look at all the companies out there right now and all this news about, this war on talent and the amount of money that is being spent on talent acquisition, it's crazy. Right. And the reason that it's crazy is because it's reoccurring money of hiring people over and over because companies can't develop and retain them. And so, when I look at, the war on talent news, I think it's completely, fake because it's not talent until it's developed. And this starts with the talent acquisition process. And I think where they can add value to the bottom line is that when they're interconnected with the business, through an employee life cycle that starts with them and that, evolves over time and where, you still have someone sitting, in a company and enjoying being in that company, 3, 4, 5 years from now. And that's the problem is that you don't see that happening because, as retaining people has become impossible, the average tenure has dropped significantly. And so you're just hiring the same people over and over again. And of course, you're not going to see a value add. You're just going to continue to see dollars and people out the window.
That's so true. And I like how you mentioned that the people cycle are similarly to a product life cycle. And I find that a lot of companies, they don't understand that, the amount of money that you lose in spending time to attract and just to get them in the door and then to replace them a year later or, 2 years later. You haven't even started to really see a return on that investment just yet. So I think a lot of people miss the boat thinking, I just need a recruiter or I just need somebody to keep hiring for me. What you really need to understand is that you need a talent acquisition strategy. Now I know there's some roles that you're going to say it's high turnover, it's very transactional, but even then, your strategy needs to align with what your talent needs are so that you can really start to see the value add and see the results on the bottom line.
Yeah, it's so true. But even for roles that are transactional, you have to go back to why they're transactional.
That's true.
The last couple of companies, that I work for, the average, tenure of, people within the sales and account management team was barely 6 months. And that's just a colossal waste of time, money, and culture erosion because nobody knows who anyone is. So that there's a good chance they're not going to be here. So who cares? And then, what does it really amount to at the end of the day? Recruiters just continuing to hire the same position like Groundhog Day over and over. And so, not having, a talent acquisition strategy that, to your point, it's not just, a product life cycle. It's an overall HR and talent roadmap. And those roadmaps need to be interconnected, with the goals of the organization. And then that's how they're executed on, in tandem and not disconnected like they typically are.
Yeah. And I definitely agree. But I think one of the major challenges we have there too is that a lot of the times the HR department is one or two people.
Yeah.
All those departments you just mentioned take up fractions of your time, as opposed to having a dedicated person. I really like the trend that I've seen emerge with talent acquisition business partners. And I really like that term because the talent acquisition part, I'm already all for that. And then the business partner, I think it's important for them to see talent acquisition as a partner in your business strategy. Not only are they going out and trying to find you the best talent in the market for the job that you have available, but they're also looking at, like you said, the roadmap. What's the long-term goal? What is this role coming in? What is this person coming in to do? Where does the role transition? What does it grow into? How does that contribute to our overall strategy? So really having somebody whose sole focus is to find, to identify, attract, then retain and develop, that talent in your company. I think it's such a crucial role. And it's not just HR. I mean, it's fine calling it the HR department or the people department, but I think it's so important that we start to segment and identify how important, I'm going to say, specialization is, especially in the war on talent, because now a lot of candidates, they have options. You mentioned employer branding just a few moments ago, and people are seeing different environments, they're seeing different cultures, they're seeing different opportunities. So the war on talent is really, what's your strategy to attract this person, retain this person, and make sure that they're contributing to your business so you actually see a return on acquiring that person.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that you're spot on. I mean, the talent business partner really takes the job and the role to a new level, because when you look even at traditional recruitment or, talent acquisitions, a lot of times, as we discussed earlier, people like Waters, they were just order takers.
Right.
And, this is what I'm looking for. This is the job description, go out and get it. But that's absolutely nothing.
Right.
People to understand how the business operates, how the dynamics of the group are working together, they understand the gaps, they understand, what's going on future state. It is inherent so that, when you are looking for the right individual, you're able to clearly depict what that job is. And that's another issue. I mean, there's so many times, that I've read, heard, or even seen that, like, this is not the job that was sold to me. And a lot of times it's not even being done maliciously. It's because they don't know what they don't know. And they're just selling a bunch of words on a piece of paper. And, I think the whole, job description process is just completely outdated, along with resumes. Stop putting a bunch of words on paper and start putting KPIs on paper as to what they are, to set the expectations as to what they're going to be doing. And instead of utilizing resumes to go through all the different places that people have worked and, degrees and all that, start taking those KPIs and how they could bring them to life. And that's essentially becoming the resume, for the individual as to why that they're looking and seeking out this job. We're talking about the fluffy stuff at the beginning. And so this is why I get fluffy stuff at the end, when you're very specific with the goals, and then and they come back and they say how they're going to accomplish the goals. And you have a really good mirror as to if this is going to work or not and where the value add is going to be.
I think that's so important. And I love how you infuse the KPIs there, because I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with clients and even hiring managers, and they know, I'm going to say they think they know what they want, right? They know, for example, I'm going to use sales or, a role that is fairly easy to recruit for, you would think, right? They know what the traditional salesperson or the traditional role looks like. But when you start to drill down to what is this person supposed to be contributing to the business? What is their real function? How are they going to be measured? What are the expectations for that individual? You start to really redefine that job description. You start to really evaluate your expectations. I mean, is this really one person? Is this really the person you thought you wanted? You really start to redefine what you need versus what you wanted. And I think that is kind of where they start to muddy the waters between recruitment and talent acquisition, because you find a recruiter coming in and they'll probably try to ask those talent acquisition questions, and the hiring managers, because they've always done what they've always done and they don't know what they don't know, they're not able to answer those questions. And so you get more, like you said, it's more of a transaction. Here's what I need. Go find it for me. You know what I mean? So I think it's really important that people understand that talent acquisition it's really that. It's an acquisition. It's something that's a thought out process. You got to define really clearly what you want, how you want that person to contribute to your organization. And then you got to go out and, like you said, ditch the resume. Start to find people who are already delivering on the results that you would want them to deliver on in your company.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it just saves so much time, being clear up front, with what the goals are at hand, and then for the individual to come back and outline how they're going to accomplish them. It really starts to give you, what that roadmap is, as to the overall value proposition that this person can offer you, but, also what you can offer them as far as help and guidance, because it's, you're never going to hire the perfect person. That's never going to happen, and nor should it ever happen. You want to be adding value adds for people who think differently, that look at KPIs and actually question KPIs.
Right.
And, I can't tell you how many times where, I've had teams fill roles and then, only to find out later that the role wasn't needed. And, now an individual is losing their job because of our own stupidity. That's not fair. There's no value add there. And
that's right.
I think that, job seekers need to be very critical in their interviewing process to make sure that they're being clear as to not only what they can do, but what the company is going to do for them, and what they're going to collectively do through KPIs. And it keeps people honest, as far as setting expectations and overall value.
Well, I really like the honesty that you put there. I know not a lot of people would have said, you know what, we wasted our time. We're wasting this person's time. Now we're going to have to lay them off because we weren't strategic. In the moment, we thought we needed this role. Nobody took the time to think it through. And now we're putting somebody, out of a job because we didn't take the time to do due diligence. And then I also like what you brought up there with the job market really is changing. Now I'm starting to, in the recruitment process and in the talent acquisition process, you're starting to have people ask the question, where's the company in 6 months? Where's the company planning to go in a year? What is this role expected to do over the next 6 months? Or how is this role contributing to the company's overall strategic objectives? And the minute you start having candidates asking those questions, it really starts to send a message to the talent acquisition team or to the hiring manager that, listen, we need to really understand what this person is coming in for, because they're not only coming in just to do a role, they're looking for what their contribution is going to be. And I think more and more people are coming into the job market with that kind of strategic thinking. Is this the right company for me? Are they really going in the direction that I want my career to go? And I think once, more candidates start asking those questions, talent acquisition is going to have to get on their A game, because now you're going to have companies competing with candidates because they're looking to offer them more.
Yeah, but I think we have to be careful. I mean, talent acquisition has to be on their A game for a lot of different reasons, but they're not the ones that defining the goals and the overall KPIs. And this is where leadership has to get on their A game. And this is, has been the problem, why we have all these things out there that are just an excuse of rather than addressing what the real problem is. Okay. Going back to the war on talent. All right. If you're turning over staff left and right, there's not a war on talent. There's a war within your company that you need to rectify before you hire any more people.
Amen.
Okay? It's like,
That's right.
Let's just call this what this is. Everything starts from the top, and talent acquisition is a critical function, but that function cannot work without clarity and support and a mission and vision that has to come down from leadership. And then it's talent acquisition's job to be able to see what that overall, evolution looks like, how it's going to be, processed out within a roadmap, or workflow, and then be able to marry, the talent goals, with the overall company and organizational goals. If there is not that marriage, from the beginning, and it's just convoluted, then the whole thing is going to be convoluted. And this is why, we have people that are leaving. Alarming statistics are out there that, I think it was like the latest from Gallup that 70% of people right now that have jobs are looking for other jobs. That is terrible. So that means that 70% of companies out there aren't doing a lot of right things. And so I think, we have to look at the mirror and look at ourselves as to what we're doing rather than pointing the blame on the fact that there isn't talent and that there's a war on talent or they can't find people with the skill sets. If you have a great person and they want to learn and there's fire in the belly and they're coachable, then train that individual up to be a value add, to the organization,
That's right.
rather than, saying, they're this, that, or not that. And we're being so elitist in a way. We all have to continue to learn. And the only way to be able to do that is not only with a clear mission and vision and goals, but, what are you going to give back to the person, for them coming in to do a job? It's more about wages and benefits and perks. It's the overall employee value proposition. What are you going to give back? How are they going to add value to the overall organization? Where do they know that they fit in, that they could see that all the work they do has instilled in something that they can actually look back and see?
I'm so glad you point that out, because all through that, Christy, I was just saying, you know what, apart from I'm just screaming amen over here, I'm just going, that is so much in alignment. A lot of companies that I've talked to, and you just talking to their management team, you just start to realize that there's business strategy, but there's no HR strategy. And I know we started out this conversation by saying that talent acquisition probably should be its own department. But I mean, when you put everything back to the human resource strategy, you start to realize that there really are not a lot of companies that have an HR strategy.
No.
There's just a lot of people following orders in the HR department and trying to keep people happy. Well, it's really hard for you to keep people happy if there's no strategy,
Yeah. I mean, it's also really hard to keep people happy, when, teams of talent acquisition and HR are not empowered.
That's right.
That they want everybody happy, but then they get the crappiest budgets, right?
That's right. Or no budget at all.
Yeah, that their whole job is to maintain, everybody in the organization, but they're constantly being pushed back because of other priorities. Like, if people aren't the priority, then you're not getting all the other stuff done, because the stuff gets done by people.
That's right.
Even with, I'm totally into everything that's going on with AI and a lot of different fields, but I am not into AI coming into HR, because AI is just going to mimic what's broken within HR and talent.
And I agree with you to some extent. I do believe that, like every piece of technology, I think AI is a helpmate. It's not a solution. And I notice a lot of HR departments, for example, you put in an HRIS system and all of a sudden they go, oh, this is our savior. We don't have to do this anymore. We don't have to do that anymore. But I think of technology more as a partner in what we do. It's a tool to what we do. It shouldn't be where, okay, AI is going to take over this function of HR, or it's going to take over this portion of HR. It really should be AI is going to help us to make it more efficient, more effective, free up time for people to connect with people so we can advance the people mission within the company. So I definitely agree with you on that. We need to get back to aligning that HR strategy with a business strategy, and then getting that talent acquisition framework in there as well, so that we can really add value. So I want to touch on now, how do we really develop a successful talent acquisition strategy? Because I know HR professionals, even I'm going to say pseudo HR professionals in organizations, there's a lot of pushback. Everybody's pushing back on budget, on people, resources. But, how do we really put together a successful talent acquisition strategy?
It's a great question. And I'm going to probably give you the most boring answer, but it's the most important answer. A successful talent acquisition strategy not only starts with stakeholder, management and buy-in, but it starts with process. You're not going to have a successful, you can have all the bells and whistles and be out there on every job board and doing all these events and networking and all this other stuff. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have, concrete, interview questions, a concrete cadence to how you are interviewing people and how you're reaching out to people, and what questions that you're asking them that align with the mission and the vision and the values and the competencies, of the organization, then you're not going to get any of the other stuff right. And so I think that the biggest thing that the talent acquisition needs to do, and not just talent acquisition, a lot of different departments, but be successful, is to really start with what the overall process and playbook is internally. before you start to project externally. Because that's what's happening right now, is that they're spending all this money on projecting externally. They come in and they get upset that they have a terrible Glassdoor review because the interview process was terrible.
That's right. That's right. And I definitely agree with you on that. It starts at the top. And I know you alluded to that earlier, but it really does. It starts at the top. The strategy starts at the top. The tone starts at the top. The culture starts at the top. And I find it's very difficult to get senior managers to understand why HR needs a seat at the table. I mean, you quoted that statistic where 70% of people, you know, are not comfortable or, you know, are not really comfortable in their jobs, and you're going, wow, that's a lot of companies not doing, you know, the right thing. And I don't feel it's a lot of companies who don't know how to do the right thing. And I don't think it's a lot of companies who don't have the resources to do the right thing. I think it's a lot of companies who have failed to listen to HR. I think it's a lot of companies who have failed to put HR strategy as a key component of their business strategy. And like you said, if your mission and vision and all these other things don't align and actually filter down through your HR strategy, then there's no point in even putting together a talent acquisition plan, because you're not going to achieve what you need to achieve because you don't know what it is that you need to achieve.
I agree, but here's the thing. I'll take a step further. It's not that, you know, they may not be listening to, you know, their HR and talent teams, is that they don't understand what HR and talent's supposed to do.
And I agree with that. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, that was the biggest wake-up call for me. You know, I've been in a lot of positions, in a lot of roles within HR before I started Go Coach. And I'll never forget, you know, I did a startup venture, you know, because I've been in a lot of big businesses before and done a lot of M&A. And, you know, within the startup venture, I didn't think that I was going to have to start from, you know, ground zero of, you know, explaining what HR does. Like, I knew I was going to start from ground zero. I was having to build, you know, an entire HR and talent process, but it became quite clear to me that they had no idea, you know, what my role is and should be within the organization. They just knew that they needed it, and so they hired it. And not only that, the employees didn't know how to interact, you know, with me and the team, because it was the first time that they had an HR individual. And so I think, you know, really defining, you know, what that role is with once again, going back to KPIs, like make it easy. Right. Sit there and put out a fluffy job description of like, it's all about culture and it's all about employee engagement, blah, blah, blah. No, it's not. Here are the KPIs. We hire a ton of people. You know, we don't have any type of performance review or feedback. You know, what are you going to do? How are you going to initiate it? How are you going to get buy-in? How are you going to launch throughout the company? How are you going to make sure that it sticks? Like, and it starts with the basic fundamentals.
I totally agree. And I think you've hit on that too. And I'll segue into data analytics, because I think that's kind of where we're evolving to. And I know I did a recent article and talking about HR analytics is a lot easier than you think. You know, a lot of people, like you said, just from the feedback, you know, performance reviews, just getting feedback from employees, doing a touch base, you know, with your manager, understanding the feedback that's coming through. And actually, like you said, putting that into metrics, putting that into data that they can connect with. Just like they can connect with financials, they can see when we're doing well, when we're not doing well. I think once you start to paint that kind of picture of your HR department, and like you said, educate them on what the HR department does. And I think one of the key reasons I think a lot of people can't explain what HR does, they probably don't really understand what they do either. I mean, I've talked to a lot of professionals who are, I'm going to say, solo practitioners or relatively mid-career, so junior to mid-career, trying to explain what they do to a senior manager. It's almost like you're asking them to do an impossible task. So I think sometimes, you know, I'm not going to say the wrong person's in the role, but they're not equipped or they're not empowered or they're probably not able to articulate exactly what it is that they do and what their function is and what their role is. And by virtue of that, I think they get left out of the conversation. So like you said, you know, sometimes you gotta start from ground zero and explain exactly what HR is. But once you take it to that step, I think you also have to bring, you know, with you those KPIs, those metrics, the things that are going to really tell the story through data to show them exactly what we do, what the value is that we bring, and how we can really transform the organization by performing, you know, what we believe is what the organization needs.
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on. You know, it's something that is still, I think, taboo to a lot of HR organizations, because they've been very used to, just kind of like, continue to push something and, it sounds okay, it feels okay, so it's okay, but not be able to depict that ROI. And that's a huge frustration. And I do think that is a big skill set gap that does exist within HR for a lot of reasons, going back to, how big the role is. But too, I've worked on a lot of systems and, I've had to pull data from, 10 different places and put it in pivot tables to throw it in some graphs. And, I knew that because, my career actually started in finance before I switched over to HR. I think, that there are gaps within individuals of not looking, holistically at all the different components, but you have to be able to pick that value add. And the data drives everything. The data is the beacon as to what's going to happen next. And that's essentially how talent, HR, and any company play offense. The data is your offensive play. Without the data, it's just a guessing game, and it's frustration, and then it leads to disenfranchised employees and upset leadership and, other issues.
I like how you put that snowballing effect with the playing offense there, because I was just getting into that section. There are a lot of things that HR does defensively. There are a lot of things that you go, well, we should have been proactive about this, or had we had this, we could have, reacted better and prevented a reaction of, we could have been proactive. So what are your recommendations for HR to play offense? What do you think will help us get to that point? Because right now, a lot of HR people, I'm sure, are playing defense. They're very reactive. How do we move to that offensive side?
So the way that I've always been able to get to play offense has been through not only an HR roadmap that marries the overall organization, roadmap and goals, but it has been through the data, which is we're discussing, because it's able to, clearly see where we are, where we need to go and where we started from and what's working and what's not working. And because, people it's all conversation and communications. It's really hard to be able to have data, that tracks like all the different things that happen with the organizations. And so it's being very clear as to, what's important in that employee life cycle and how that employee life cycle looks at the overall organizational life cycle and how they can be, put together in a way. And so being able to clearly show where you are moving along that process, similar to a product roadmap, you're playing offense because people can clearly see what you've done, what you're doing, and what you're going to do. Being able to have the data that depicts everything that you've done, within that roadmap, it tells you where you're off or where you need to go and what's about to come up next. I think that when people start to look at HR as a true function within an organization and then, treat it like a true function in the organization, that helps. But I also think that HR needs to look at itself, just like every other function in the organization and make sure that they're bringing the value that all the other functions do bring. And it starts with ROI. It starts with data. It starts with metrics. It starts with roadmap, process, planning. What are we going to do and how are we going to do it and how are we going to do it together?
That's right. And I think a lot of people associate HR with the warm and fuzzy, and we're more about making people feel good, and we're more about the employee experience. But I think they also forget the flip side. We are a part of the business. We are a department that is accountable, whether it's accountable to metrics we create or metrics the organization creates for us, but we need to hold ourselves accountable. And to do that, like you said, we need data. And I mean, you'd be surprised how many HR professionals are still holding on to Excel sheets and spreadsheets. And there's nothing wrong with your spreadsheet, but I mean, what are you using it for? Like, how is that contributing to you sitting at the table and saying, here's our roadmap, here's how we're doing, here's where we need to go, here's how we're going to get there, and here are the indicators, the key indicators that are going to tell us we're getting there, right? And before we go to our first break, I wanted to touch on, for our candidates or professionals who are listening to us, how does talent acquisition, or how is it changing the market for candidates? We touched on that a little bit earlier, but how do you see talent acquisition really changing the market for candidates?
So that question for me or the audience?
That's for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that it's not that the candidates are just taking the outputs of something that you've done, and it's how they view it and see it and, translate it. And I think if there is too much ambiguity, it's going to lead to people not wanting to use something, just like, any other product or service, that's out there. I mean, if you look at all the successful apps out there, the users are liking something because it's very clear and easy to do, that they feel rewarded from it. They like doing it, that there's pure enjoyment, right?
Right.
I think especially with millennials and even Gen Z, if they are not finding a mutual enjoyment as to all the things that they're going to do, then they don't care. And I think I actually think it's good. It's about time somebody said that. I mean, I've been in grueling jobs throughout my career. And, I didn't really feel satisfied, but at the same time, it was different economic measures. That they're in the position right now, and I think it's a strong position, that we should be listening to and using as the path as to where we need to go. And they are essentially saying people first.
Right.
And that if you're not people first and you're just going to push me along the way, I'm not going to be interested. I'm not going to interview. I'm not going to look at your job. I am looking at the reviews. The reviews aren't good. So, it's not just about the fact that they are in the driver's seat. It's that we actually have feedback and data from them that could help to cultivate the plans that we need to be able to build within these organizations.
And that's a really, really, really good answer there, Christy, because I'm just listening to that and I'm going, you know what? A key theme throughout our discussion so far with talent acquisition is, one, you got to listen and you got to collect that feedback. Just from what you said with how candidates are really being impacted by talent acquisition, you're right. It's really the experience. If this is the, I'm going to say, precursor to what's going to happen when I join this organization, how do I feel about this? And then I think being able to collect that feedback and constantly improve the process of talent acquisition so that you not only make it beneficial for you, the employer who's looking to acquire the talent, but also for the talent who's going through the process. And taking that feedback, I think, is really, really, really important. So this is HR and Career with AldeenST. We're going to be right back after this short break.
Are you stuck in a job you don't like and can't get out? Are you returning to the workforce and feeling scared, unprepared, and lost? Are you struggling with your job search? You are not alone. Many people work with a coach to use proven strategies to help them take charge and navigate their job search and career development. Learn more at AldeenST.com or email AldeenST@gmail.com to set up your first discovery session.
See the difference an HR business partner can make in your business. Let us show you how a strong, strategic, and aligned human resource strategy can help you reduce costs, improve productivity, and help you retain your competitive advantage. Make your human resources strategy part of your business strategy to drive real business results. Let us show you how at AldeenST.com or at AldeenST@gmail.com. Aldeen Simmonds Thorpe Consulting, transforming your business with the power of people.
Boost your job search with a masterclass. Learn how to optimize your efforts, use multiple strategies, and get hired faster through our Job Seeker Masterclasses. Learn how to craft an outstanding resume, network yourself into a job, and interview like a pro. Join a class today at AldeenST.com. Optimize your job search and get hired faster.
Welcome back to HR and Career with AldeenST. I'm your host, AldeenST. Today we are joined by Christy McCann-Flynn from Go Coach, and we have been talking about talent acquisition, value budgets, and playing offense. So far, we've been talking a lot about how talent acquisition has evolved, how it's been different from recruitment, and the entire talent experience throughout the process. Now we want to go into our second segment, truth or myth. So I'm going to be asking Christy some, I want to say tough ones here, to get her feedback on whether she thinks that these things are a truth or myth in the talent acquisition realm. So the first one I've got for you, Christy, recruiters and talent acquisition teams are the same.
No.
That definitely is a myth. For sure. And I think from our conversation, we've hit a ton of the reasons why we definitely think it's a myth. All right, I got another one for you. So a social media strategy does not affect your employer brand.
I think that that's a myth also, because, and the reason being is a social media strategy is just one component of what an employer brand is, and the biggest employer brand component is the people that you have in there along with the values.
That's true. I wanted to follow up on that a little bit more. So I've worked with companies who have zero social media presence, meaning they don't interact with any of their potential candidates through social media. And then you've also got some companies that are very active on social media. In your opinion, do you think that has a significant impact on their ability to, acquire talent, or, does it really make a difference when it comes down to, let's say, choosing between, let's say, a Fortune 500 company and a company who's probably family owned and been around for a while?
Well, I think it depends on the content that they're putting out there. I mean, this is some of the stuff that I see on social media that companies post. It's just like, yeah, that's cool, but, what does that really mean, about you, as a company and as an individual? And I think that use social media to really, depict the lens of, who you are as a company. I think that it could be very effective. But if you pick social media just to talk about like ping pong tables and, that you're all doing like all these great things and not talking about the people who are doing them, then it's just more fluff.
I agree. I definitely agree with you there. So truth or myth, Christy, you don't need to communicate with candidates if they don't make the cut.
Oh God, no, that's terrible. If someone didn't make the cut, just let them know. And not only that, the teams that, I've run and, Rebecca, who works with me now, co-coach, and, who worked with me at a couple of different companies know this. It's, giving the candidate feedback is so important. That's why they didn't make the cut, because it will actually help them in their next role.
That's right. So I want to follow up then with another question here. So I've been in the, I'm going to say on the interviewer side, and I've had candidates reach out to me and say, can you give me some feedback on, what I did well or what I didn't do? How far would you go to provide that feedback? Are you okay with sending them an email? And then how detailed would you be? Or would you rather, at the end of the interview, you say, oh, by the way, I would recommend you this. How would you tackle that?
I mean, it once again depends on where they are in the process. I don't think it's appropriate to give feedback until you've made a decision. And that is part of the process, because you're evaluating lots of different things in there, and to give them a nugget here or there, it can be a distraction. I think, a great, recruiter, or anyone within talent acquisition is, how they're positioning and presenting, what that they think that could be work well for them in the interview process, which is, that interview prep, explaining, how the head of sales, likes to interview and the things that he's keen on, explaining, what the VP of product management, the things that, he really likes and the things that, distract him or annoy him or her. I think giving a lens into all the people that they're meeting, and to give them guidance, as to how they interpret and look at things, gives a really good competitive advantage, because, when you're meeting somebody for the first time, it's awkward. It's like, where do you start?
That's right. That's right.
And sometimes I'm pretty good at, with meeting people, but my God, my social awkwardness will come out every once in a while, and it's just like, oh my God, what just happened? And it's not intentional, but the more that you could prepare someone as to, who they're meeting, how the organization is operating, that's true talent acquisition strategy right there. And the feedback that you provide them, if they didn't, make the cut, be based on the fact that did they even listen to what you gave them?
That's right. That's right. Well, I think you're almost reading my piece of paper here, because my other truth or myth that I wanted to ask is, do you think it's valuable? So is it valuable for companies to clearly articulate what the process looks like, or should they guide the candidate through the process?
I think being transparent as what the process looks like and also guiding them through the process is really important, because that's their brand. If you're not being customer centric from the front, like you think about it, like when you go to some of your favorite stores or when you go to some of your favorite places, there's a reason you go there, because you like going there, and there's an overall good customer experience and customer feel that, you have been guided through or that you're attracted to, and that's why you're there. So I think that's so important that we should be doing that with people also, is to, be able to show them the ropes, and set expectations, clearly up front. And it's just going to give them awareness as to what's going on, but it does help with a lot of the soft skills that people miss on. Like, did they listen? Because that's a good indicator if they're good at listening or not, that you don't need to figure out in an interview. You can just figure out in the feedback as to how they, taken what you've given them, as they actually applied it. It also gives, a good indicator, not only, can they listen, but, do they care, about going through the process and what it means, and are they asking the right questions? These are all true indicators as to how they're going to work in the organization that you're getting up front in a sneak preview before the hiring manager is.
Well, I love that you brought that up, because I remember in the episode that I had my mom on, she was talking about the traits that people look at as indicators of how you will behave in the organization. And it's funny that you mentioned that. I also mentioned that recently, that, if the candidate does not pay attention to the instructions that you put out in the job ad, for example, don't call until it's 2 weeks past, and then they call you, they hit you up after the first week, or they say, or you put out in there, don't call us, we'll connect with you. And then they start to call you and leave voicemails and stuff like that. It really starts to tell you a lot about them, how they listen, how they follow instructions. And I definitely agree with you. The more information I think companies put into making sure that candidates understand what is expected in the talent acquisition process, I think is a better quality candidates you're going to get, because now people can clearly self-eliminate. They can identify, what the requirements are, so they come better prepared. Well, I would hope they would use that information to be better prepared. And then they also, are able to really identify with elements of the experience as I'm going to say, a precursor of what's going to come after. So if a company is very good at outlining what the process looks like before, I would imagine, at least if I were a candidate, I'd say, that's probably a pretty good indication of how the companies ran anyways. Maybe they're very clear about their expectations and what they're looking for, which may or may not work with my style. And then the last one, sorry, go ahead, Christy.
Yeah, no, it's that transparency up front. You're setting expectations and you're being very clear. You're doing your side, and it's up to them if they want to continue to partake in it. The more clear that we are is going to give people the cognitive ability to be able to infer if this is right for them or not. Now, I don't think we should be giving like the whole kit and caboodle cheat sheet away, like, these are questions or anything like that, because, we want to be able to see, how people do infer and how they are solution oriented, and, what they would do in certain situations, behavioral based or skill based. But I think it's very important, like, hey, this is going to take a 2-week process. Like, and oh, by the way, that hiring manager is out on vacation the following week, so it might take 3 weeks. Like, it's that uncomfortable feeling that a candidate is constantly left with when they don't understand what the process is going to be and expectations aren't being set. And it just is a lens into how the company operates. And that's why they say, nope, I'm done. I don't want to be here and I don't care.
That's so true. And I think just like we are lightening candidate experience to customer experience, if you start to look at the talent acquisition process like you would like to experience, or you think of, like you said, think of the store or the company that you like, based on their customer experience, just the fact that you're informed and you feel connected to them, that's the kind of the same way we'd like to have our candidates feel. We want to make sure that they're constantly informed. And like you said, not sharing everything, but, giving them enough that they feel valued and appreciated, that they're participating in the process. And then I got my last truth or myth for you. Talent acquisition is a risk mitigation strategy.
Risk mitigation?
Yeah, truth or myth.
I don't even know how to answer that question, because the fact that you're putting talent acquisition and risk together, I don't know. It's got to be a myth. Talent acquisition is not about risk. Talent acquisition is about strategy, and it's about people. And there's going to be risk in everything that we do in life. But if you have, process that evolves around the people and how you're orienting them into the company, through a great candidate experience and then through, further training and development, you minimize your risk.
Well, you know what? I wanted to challenge you, but that last piece there, I think you kind of covered what my thoughts on it would be. So in my opinion, I think talent acquisition is a risk mitigation strategy, because if you compare talent acquisition to recruiting, you're mitigating a lot of financial risk. If you take the time to hire right, I'm going to say, to find the right person, acquire the right talent, you're in some ways mitigating a lot of that financial risk and expense when it comes to having to recruit that role 2 or 3 times for the year, because you haven't spent the time to do that. And I know especially in sensitive areas or sensitive industries, you want to make sure that the talent you acquire isn't walking out with all your proprietary information or your processes or anything like that as well. So making sure you acquire the right person is so important.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, but I think that talent acquisition holds some of that risk mitigation, that they don't hold all. And that's where the collaboration, between hiring managers and leadership is where the real risk mitigation is. If talent acquisition is acting, in a fiefdom or in a silo, then you're just going to continue to, recycle people in and out the door. And so I think that the true risk mitigation is making sure that the organization understands what HR and talent is, what they need to be doing and how they need to partner with them and how they have to have shared goals.
That's right. I definitely agree with that. All right. So we're going to take our last break and then we'll be right back.
Great. Thank you.
See the difference an HR business partner can make in your business. Let us show you how a strong, strategic, and aligned human resource strategy can help you reduce costs, improve productivity, and help you retain your competitive advantage. Make your human resources strategy part of your business strategy to drive real business results. Let us show you how at AldeenST.com or at AldeenST@gmail.com. Aldeen Simmonds Thorpe Consulting. Transforming your business with the power of people.
Welcome back to HR and Career with AldeenST. I am your host, AldeenST. I am joined by Christy McCann-Flynn from Go Coach today, and we've been having, I want to say, a great discussion on talent acquisition, value budgets, and playing offense. We shared a little bit about what we thought about the talent acquisition process, breaking it down for both employers and for candidates, and then we rattled into some truth or myths. So before I wrap up the show today, I just want to ask Christy for her best advice. So if you could talk to our HR professionals listening right now, what would be your best advice on helping them to really take charge and make the best use of talent acquisition?
Be bold. And when I say be bold, don't settle. The way that they can take control of the talent acquisition process and make sure that they have a great partner in leadership, the CEO, so that they could, make great things together, which is bringing in great people and really helping the organization. And so be bold and don't settle, because you're there for a reason, and people need to know that you're there for a reason and how we can make this all work together.
Perfect. Well, I love that, Chrissy. Be bold. So to our listeners who are, getting into talent acquisition, or maybe you're already in there, maybe you're not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel yet, or maybe you are, but continue to be bold. Well, thank you so much, Christy, for joining me. And thank you to our listeners for joining me for another episode of HR and Career with AldeenST. Join us again as we dive into the many facets of human resources and career development, providing practical and useful tips you can use to move you forward. See you next time.
Thank you.